Rome Reports comes to you from the Department of Social Communications, Catholic Archdiocese of Accra, this and every Sunday from 3:30 to 4 p.m. on GTV.
Our family has spanned the centuries and the globe. With God's grace, we started hospitals to care for the sick. We established orphanages and help the poor. We are the largest charitable organization on the planet, bringing comfort to those in need. We educate more children than any other institution. We developed the scientific method and founded the college system. We defend the dignity of human life and uphold marriage. Guided by the Holy Spirit, we compiled the Bible. We are transformed by sacred scripture and sacred tradition, which have guided us for 2,000 years. We are the Catholic Church, with over 1 billion in our family, sharing in the sacraments and fullness of the Christian faith. Jesus started our church when he said to Peter, the first pope, "You are rock, and upon this rock I will build my church." So if you've been away from the Catholic Church, we invite you to take another look. Visit catholicscomehome.org today. We are Catholic. Welcome home.
Coming up in today's show, we share the Pope's decisions in the Synod document Querida Amazonia. See the Church's work in Venezuela and their difficult situation. The Vatican displays Raphael's tapestries in the exact places for which the artist designed them. All this and much more here on Rome Reports. In October, after 3 weeks of discussion in the Vatican, 128 out of nearly 175 bishops asked the Pope to allow the ordination of married men as priests in remote areas of the Amazon region.
Reafirmando, sim, o grande valor do carisma do celibato na Igreja. Isso não se toca. Contudo, diante da gritante necessidade da imensa maioria das comunidades católicas na Amazônia, que ali se abra caminho para a ordenação presbiteral de homens casados que residam nas comunidades.
Pope Francis faced the issue before the Synod, but he had left the question open to dialogue.
Mi viene alla mente una frase di San Paolo VI. Preferisco dare la vita prima di cambiare la legge del celibato. Rimarrebbe qualche possibilità nei posti lontanissimi, penso all'isola del Pacifico, ma è una cosa a pensare quando c'è necessità pastorale, lì il pastore deve pensare ai fedeli.
Now Pope Francis has announced his definitive answer in the document, Querida Amazonia, or Dear Amazon in English. It also addresses many other important questions concerning this region. The Pope asserts the Christian life of the inhabitants of the Amazon is not enhanced by making priestly ordination easier. Rather, it's that lay people, especially women, religious, and permanent deacons, assume important responsibilities for the growth of communities. This means that they are part of a parish community. The Holy Father remembers the laity can proclaim the word, teach, organize faith communities, and celebrate some sacraments, such as baptism. He emphasizes that in many remote areas, faith continues thanks to the irreplaceable work of women. That's why he rules out the possibility of instituting the diaconate for women. He says it would clericalize women, inferring they only count and can make a difference if they receive a sacred order. To increase the presence of priests in the region, he asks for generosity, especially from the seminarians in Latin America. He desires a part of their formation include how to dialogue with Amazonian cultures. In addition to resolving the question of priestly celibacy without opening the door to the ordination of married men, the exhortation Beloved Amazon includes many other fundamental issues for the region and for the whole church. The Pope insists the sacraments must be accessible and regrets the lack of the Church's presence in the region. Therefore, he reinforces the role of the laity rather than promoting the priesthood for married men or clericalizing the role of women with the female diaconate or priesthood.
The response of the Synod
and the Apostolic Exhortation is to see the range of possibilities and potentialities we have not yet taken advantage of, and above all, to encourage the bishops to send missionaries to the region, to encourage the formation of deacons and the development of other ministries that make the Church present among peoples, even in the most remote regions.
Beloved Amazon underlines the Amazon peoples have the right to have the gospel proclaimed to them. He says if they do not, each ecclesial structure will become just one more NGO. Pope Francis is clear, saying do not quickly describe as superstition or paganism certain religious practices that arise spontaneously from the life of peoples. He says it is possible to take up an indigenous symbol without necessarily considering it as idolatry. The Pope asks not to culturally colonize the region, but to help her make the best of herself. Therefore, he insists those on the outside should not fall into stereotypes and avoid unfair generalizations, simplistic arguments, and conclusions drawn only on the basis of our own mindsets and experiences.
The first thing is to remove the prejudice against indigenous people. There is the idea that indigenous peoples are permanently the same without ever changing. The communities are alive and have their own proposals.
On the other hand, the Pope invites these peoples to protect themselves from a cultural invasion. At the same time, he asks they don't become a completely enclosed, ahistoric, static indigenism who refuse all forms of integration. He describes injustice and crime, national and international initiatives, as those which harm the Amazon and fail to respect the right of the original peoples to the land and its boundaries.
Do they still want more land? We had so much, but now we have almost nothing. Yet they still want to take more. They want to take away the land and kill us. The Peruvian government see these populations as a necessary evil, as second-rate populations abandoned in a territory that must be exploited. For them, they are unprepared and incompetent people.
Therefore, he asks for rules that set limits and ensure the protection of ecosystems from the huge global economic interests. He says the solution is not internationalizing the Amazon. At the individual level, the Pope proposes a change in lifestyle and consumption models. He invites everyone to learn how to contemplate from indigenous peoples, because on many occasions our God-given aesthetic and contemplative sense is blocked. Beloved Amazon unites caring for Amazonian peoples and caring for their ecosystem. The Pope warns that if they are separated, the life and beauty of the Amazon will be destroyed, even though people would like to keep thinking nothing is happening. Pope Francis invites everyone to listen to the wisdom of the indigenous that inspires care and respect for creation and prohibits its abuse. The Pope wants the Church to be at the forefront of caring for Amazonian values and lifestyle. He wants it done with total transparency. That's why he asked to pay special attention to the provenance of donations, as well as to investments made by ecclesiastical institutions or individual Christians.
The president of Hungary didn't expect the Pope to greet him in Hungarian. János Áder visited the Vatican to commemorate 100 years of diplomatic relations between Hungary and the Holy See. The president also invited the Pope to inaugurate or conclude the International Eucharistic Congress, to take place in Budapest from September 13th to 20. He also gifted the Pope this sculpture of a monk in prayer. It's called Meditation and was made by Josef Damko. The Pope in turn gave the President a bas-relief of the project for a third colonnade for St. Peter's Square. He also gave him several of his pontifical documents. As per tradition, upon saying goodbye to the President and his wife, the Pope asked them for their prayers.
The foreign minister of the Orthodox Patriarchate of Moscow visited the Pope in the Vatican. The tone of the meeting was very cordial. They're in Rome to commemorate the 4 years since the Pope's encounter with the Russian Patriarch Kirill. During their time together, they agreed for further collaboration to help war-wounded children in Syria. After meeting behind closed doors, before leaving, the Pope gave him a message for the leader of the Russian Orthodox Church.
Grazie
Santità.
Sé che desidero incontrarlo presto.
Grazie, Santità.
The Pope and the Patriarch of Moscow have only met once. It was 4 years ago, February 12, 2016, on neutral territory in Havana, Cuba. The Pope wants to boost relations with the Russian Orthodox Church, which traditionally keeps its distance from the Catholic Church. The situation is complex because Moscow has also broken relations with the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, which nevertheless maintains a great friendship with Pope Francis.
Nice to see you again. So happy you accept us.
Mosh Kantor, president of the European Jewish Congress, was very pleased to be able to meet with Pope Francis. They previously met 3 years ago on the eve of the International Day of Remembering Victims of the Holocaust. The encounters seem to have left a mark on President Mosh Kantor.
To pray for your health. Yes. And it's resultable. I see it's resultable because I am doing this every day for 3 years.
As a gift, the Pope received a work by Jewish artist Viktor Pivovarov on behalf of Kantor. The president belongs to the World Jewish Congress, representing more than 100 Jewish communities around the world. On their website, they closely watch each appeal Pope Francis makes to combat anti-Semitism, like this one in November 2019.
Gli ebrei sono fratelli nostri e non vanno perseguitati. Capito?
Since 2015, at least 750 Christians have been killed and about 600,000 have been forced from their homes in Burkina Faso. On Sunday, February 16th, armed men entered a Protestant church during a weekly service and killed 24 people, including the pastor. Coming up after the break, the Cardinal of Hong Kong's extreme measure to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. You are watching Rome Reports.
To avoid gathering.
Seated and wearing a mask, Cardinal John Dong-Hong suspended masses in Hong Kong until February 28th. He asked Catholics to follow them online, including Ash Wednesday. The only exception will be for weddings that were already scheduled and funerals. This is in response to the coronavirus epidemic.
At this difficult time, everyone should not panic. We must deepen our trust in God and implement our Christian love for our neighbors and all people, in addition to fulfilling our Mass obligation.
During Wednesday's general audience, the Pope asked for prayers for the citizens of China.
Anche una preghiera per I nostri fratelli cinesi che soffrono questa malattia così crudele, che trovino la strada della guarigione il più presto possibile.
In the midst of the outbreak, the World Health Organization convened a research forum to mobilize international action in response to the coronavirus that has so far infected more than 60,000 people and has claimed more than 1,100 lives. In Venezuela, the monthly average food consumption for a family is around $300. Meanwhile, a worker's salary in many cases does not exceed $5.
It is one of the countries suffering a major humanitarian crisis, refugee crisis, crisis of values, political crisis, and a crisis affecting every part of society. Aid to the church in need could do nothing but help this country and the church there. It's being a truly Samaritan church with the most disadvantaged and the most needy.
An example of the work Aid to the Church in Need supports are these soup kitchens present in nearly all Venezuelan parishes. It's the priests who are an always outstretched hand that never falter. One of them is Father Ángel Colmenares, a priest in Catia la Mar, very close to Caracas. Another example of the church's never-tiring work is this parish soup kitchen in San Sebastián de Maiquetia. Here, 150 elderly, children, parents, and people with disabilities are able to eat. In August 2016, they only had to serve food on Mondays, but now it's grown to 5 days a week. Aid to the Church in Need supports more than 1,200 priests from all over the country. Helping them means helping hundreds of families eat properly at least once a day.
The priests especially are behind many acts of social aid. It could be solidarity pots, soup kitchens, serving the needy, turning to the people when they need it most, listening to people, and of course their fundamental work of providing the sacraments. Thus, supporting the priests is to sustain the charitable work of the Church in Venezuela. We do that through donations.
The nuns' contribution is also huge. These Eucharistic missionaries of Nazareth run a soup kitchen and a training center for women, so that through a trade, the women can make a living. They provide unconditional material and spiritual help. Aid to the Church in Need supports them, the priests, and also the youth through the parishes. Of the 4 million people who have left Venezuela because of the crisis, most of them are young. That's why the Venezuelan Church takes special care of them, so that they do not lose hope and can be the architects of a better tomorrow for Venezuela. A century ago, just 35 years after their beginnings in the United States, the Knights of Columbus came to Rome to offer activities to Catholic youth. Through decades and 9 papacies, their presence still remains in the Eternal City, as members traveled for their board meeting in the city that welcomed them 100 years ago.
It's been a wonderful relationship because to be so closely affiliated with the work of the Holy Father in the city of Rome has had tremendous benefits for the past century for our work in the United States and other countries, emphasizing charity, unity, and fraternity.
Today, the charity offers special assistance, events for youth like Special Olympics, and material funds for the improvement of the Catholic Church. One example of their attention to maintenance and conservation of Christianity is with the Scavi tour to see the tomb of St. Peter.
Well, we're working with the Fabbrica di San Pietro on an exciting project to have illumination for the Scavi, which is the tomb of St. Peter. So this is a tremendous testimony to really the founding of our church and the whole reason why St. Peter's is built where it is, because they insisted on honoring the Prince of the Apostles, St. Peter, and they wanted the basilica directly over his tomb.
In a meeting with Pope Francis, the Supreme Knight Carl Anderson promised the Pope they would continue to work to be a sign of unity, charity, and a beacon of light to the world.
The Holy Father thanked us for our faithful witness to the sacredness of human life, to suggest that we're a witness to overcome the globalization of indifference as a model for youth and young Catholics. For him to say that we have, since our founding, had unswerving support to the successor of Peter. What more could you ask for to hear that from the Pope?
As they look forward with immigration and persecution of Christians as ever-pressing topics, they plan on evangelizing, breaking cultural barriers, and overcoming the globalization of indifference. Which country has the highest number of WhatsApp users? India, Mexico, France. You are watching Rome Reports. Which country has the highest number of WhatsApp users? India, Mexico, France. The correct answer is A. There are 340 million WhatsApp users in India. You are watching Rome Reports.
My proposal was, it's kind of a long story. I met my wife in China. We dated for 2 years, long distance relationship over the phone for 2 years. When we finally met together in Africa, specifically in Nigeria, I proposed just in a living room. I just gave her the ring and said, would you consider marrying me? And surprisingly, she said yes.
Probably not in the most romantic way. We'd already kind of decided that we were going to get married, and he showed up with the ring, and I said yes.
Well, I proposed by giving her a kiss at 12 o'clock noon, and we got married the next day.
I proposed to my wife in Sicily. We were on a ferry from Naples down to Sicily, and of course, down on one knee, will you marry me? What do you think she said?
Saying I do is one of the most important moments in a married person's life, yet oftentimes there aren't many resources to fully prepare for the sacrament as a Catholic bride or groom. That was until 2015, when an online community connecting Catholic wedding vendors and brides was launched as Spoken Bride. Co-founder Jaiza Zito explained the goal was to provide wedding inspiration that sought virtue, true freedom and love, and ultimately God.
There was a need for Catholics who worked in the wedding industry to come together as a community and as a support system in a work environment that is often very secular and very materialistic and can sometimes also be cutthroat. And on top of that, I saw an even greater need for a witness and a way of showcasing the beauty and the truth and the goodness of the sacrament of marriage within the Catholic Church.
Maybe brides and grooms enter into their wedding day with a desire to invite everyone they know into the joy of the sacrament of marriage. And when Catholic vendors are on site and able to see the vision of the bride and groom and support it with their own skills and talents, it creates a beautiful synergy that provides a love and a beauty that reveals God's grace in exponential ways.
This uniting of Catholic vendors and future spouses became even stronger as contacts were made through their vendor guide. It offers recommendations for Catholic photographers and floral designers who understand the faith, all the way to instructors for natural family planning. Accompanying that is their blog, with articles offering wedding preparation advice and planning resources. There are also explanations on what the Church teaches, wedding day hacks, and best practices for having a Christ-centered ceremony.
We're hoping that having this Catholic resource will help encourage and provide support and give a source of knowledge and empowerment to our Catholic brides, that so they don't feel so clueless walking into their wedding planning and marriage preparation.
Spoken Bride is a beautiful platform because it offers a community of women from all over the world who can share their stories and come together.
This community, created with the goal to guide brides to God amidst the bedlam of wedding planning, is able to encourage those engaged and newlyweds to keep striving in their faith. Spoken Bride affirms and celebrates this exciting time in life with everyone who comes to their page, offering much-needed relief to the worldly side of wedding planning and married life.
This is the Vatican's great tribute in commemoration of the 500th anniversary of the death of the genius Raphael. For 1 week, these 12 spectacular tapestries will be on display in the exact place for which they were intended, the Sistine Chapel.
At the beginning of the Renaissance in 1515, Lorenzo de' Medici's son, Leo X, who had become Pope 2 years before, decided to ask Raphael, the papal court's painter, to finish decorating his residence. He also asked him to complete the marvelous catechetical message in the Sistine Chapel, which was his palace's main chapel. The idea was to complete the Sistine Chapel's religious message on some of the walls in which the fake drapes had been drawn in Sixtus IV's time. The completed message showed the transition from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Now they added the Acts of the Apostles, which corresponded to evangelization.
Vatican Museum experts spent 13 hours working meticulously to hang these extremely delicate works exactly as Raphael would have done.
It was very exciting. Many of us museum employees worked on it. It was a group effort. We couldn't believe it because the tapestries fit perfectly. They completed the Sistine Chapel as if they had always been there. In those times, St. Peter's Basilica was still under construction. That's why papal ceremonies were celebrated here, in this magnificent place.
In their own time, these pieces revolutionized the artistic scene. Raphael had dared to make tapestries that weren't merely decorative, but authentic narrative works. That's why they were woven by the master Peter van Aelst. He used silk and wool thread, adding gold and silver fibers to make them shine. It's a spectacular work of art that, for a week, will transform the Sistine Chapel into Raphael's chapel.
In our next program, we'll tell you all about the Pope's plans for Lent. This and much more here on Rome Reports.
I'd like to present a view of Christian evangelization you might not have heard before. See, if you want to effectively evangelize other people, perhaps you should start thinking of yourself as a mirror. Yes, that's right, a mirror. Those who don't know God, those who have not yet learned of Him and His love, need some kind of introduction, a sort of starting point. That's where the mirror comes in. You and I can become the very best evangelizers by simply being accurate reflections of God. The same Spirit that touched the apostles at Pentecost can embolden us to share our faith with those around us. When people see how faithfully we live our Catholic faith, they will start to understand the God they cannot see by seeing His reflection in us, the people they can see. When others witness the amazing things that come from a life lived faithfully for God, they'll want some of that too. Maybe St. Francis said it best. Preach the gospel at all times, and when necessary, use words.
Live true. Live Catholic. Live Catholic.
For over 2,000 years, the Catholic Church has consistently transformed through sacred scriptures and sacred tradition. It is comforting to know that some things remain consistent. Live truth, live Catholic. Visit our shop at Shiashi, opposite Gethsemane Cemetery, and find for yourselves the following: monstrance, chalice, candles, clerical shirts, Bibles, writings of the early church fathers, and other sacramentals. For more information, contact Live Truth, Live Catholic Bookshop on 020-222-0376 or 024-960-6155. Live Truth, Live Catholic, your number one stop shop for your religious items.
Rome Reports comes to you from the Department of Social Communications, Catholic Archdiocese of Accra. This and every Sunday from 3:30 to 4 p.m. on GTV.